Hello, everybody, and welcome to another one of our Chairs interviews, this time for the Agency Business Awards. I'm the editor of the Drum Network, Chris Sutcliffe. As you can see, I'm all at sea, so I'm hoping that our guest will be able to provide some practical and tangible advice for what she's looking for from these awards. I'm delighted to have with us Nicky Bullard, who's Chairwoman and Chief Creative Officer for MRM London, to go over what she's looking for from the entries this year. So Nicky, thank you so much for coming on. To begin with, I was hoping you could explain, MRM is multi-award winning in its own right, but do you think other agencies can emulate its success, or does every agency need to find its own metrics for success?
I think every agency is as unique as the people who are in it. So I do think you need to decide what your North Star is, and not just decide what it is, but communicate that on a regular basis to the whole agency, so everyone knows what they're collectively aiming towards, which is why things like these awards and some of the other business and agency awards are so important, because the criteria actually are great steps to any North Star. I just think I can talk to you about ours, but the first one is always, we've got to focus on our people. And I know that sounds so obvious, but from a nurturing them, sort of making sure they have opportunities to grow their careers, making sure, and I think this is really important, that they're learning from each other, not just their line manager or let's take account management, not just their team that work on a particular client, but from each other. So that's about facilitating people coming together, socials, which I know is quite hard at the moment, but even doing quizzes, just stuff like that, where we're all coming together and making sure that that group of people that are driving towards them are the most diverse bunch of people you can get, and that we're having fun as well. I think the fun word sort of got lost, but it's a big thing for me. I think if people aren't having fun, there is something fundamentally wrong with the agency. And so that's really important. And I think instilling that sense of belief that anything's possible is so important. So not just for our clients, that's really important, because anything is as possible as we want to make it as possible with our clients. But anything's possible for the agency, but also for their own careers. And I think, I think the millennial generation, which now probably quite old, but we're the first generation who are quite out there saying, what about me? This is what I want. And I think that's a really positive thing. And we need to help people get to their own personal North Stars as well. So the people thing is the most important thing. We're a people industry. Let's have fun. Let's do great work, but let's help each other and nurture each other. The next thing is obviously the work, because that's the proof of what we do. That's our product, and making sure that we're not just doing the best work we can do, but looking to the wider industry and try and do the best work that in your particular space in the industry. So again, coming back to awards, and I know our network's one of them as well. Most of the networks haven't been entering creative awards, a lot of the creative awards this year. But it is a really good benchmark, and it's great to judge awards, and we'll come on to that later, but you can see where the level is set in the industry. So there's two things. There's your own personal best, which is really important to push that, knowing what the benchmark is and trying to push above it. So that's really important. I think for us, you talked at the beginning, I would do a plug for the agency, but you talked about us being a multi-award winning agency. We had a really good year last year, and a good year because of consistency of wins and across lots of different pieces of work. So in our space, the sort of direct space, we were the only UK agency to win a Cannes Lion. We won Campaign Big's print gold, which was against the advertising agency. So that's all print, not just in direct. And this is for a piece of direct mail, which I go, yay, because I love direct mail, as you know. But the DMAs, which as we know are strategy, creative and results. So really more businessy actually, and cover the three sort of pillars of what makes great work in my head. We got, we won several gold, silvers and bronze, but we got 3 golds across 3 different clients. And for me, that's when you know that the agency is getting to a really good point, that we haven't just got one gold star account, or that they invest lots of money, or that it's a cool thing. It's that we're performing across different sectors and different clients. So the work is really important. I think the obvious one is effectiveness. It's only great work if it's work. People say it, but it's absolutely true. We can do the most beautiful work in the world, but if it's not making our clients money, they're not going to want to invest money with us anymore, and then the world goes mad. Relationships, making sure that all our relationships are always as strong, as open and as honest as they can be. So that's very important with our clients. And I think it's been really, for for me personally, really heartwarming what's been happening in COVID, and the clients who've rung up and said, this is where we're at, and been really open about where they're at as a business and what the impact might be to us. And because we've got close relationships, that allowed us to plan. And also the clients who said, don't worry, we're going to, unless something really terrible happens, we're going to push through and we're in this together, and vice versa. I think that's been a really wonderful career moment for me. That really was amazing. And also the relationships with each other. And I think the whole conversation this year around diversity and inclusion, and that our relationship with each other, this openness needs to continue into, I would say, the office, but that sounds like some sort of retronym. But when we come together, that we're open and honest, and we're so open and honest that we can call stuff out if it doesn't feel right, without, depending what it is. But if it's for example, microaggressions, being able to call it out without having to go straight to HR, and then we hold each other to account. And I think, and then new business, obviously. So not just growing our existing business with our relationships, but always looking to how can we make our business richer by looking at different sectors. So last year we won a 3, which was a big telco client for us, which is a new sector. We won British Land, so that's property. Really fascinating, especially in these times. It's been brilliant, fantastic. Done some really nice work for them. And we won mobile game with King, who do Candy Crush. So we had having that pushing ourselves to not just stick to what we think we're good at, but trying new things and pushing into new sectors has been really fascinating. So a lot of things, as I say, and that's why I think these awards are so important, because the criteria, doing I'm probably jumping ahead to the last question, but doing the forms to enter, which we've entered, is just brilliant, because it makes you look back. It makes you think, do you know what, we for everybody, I'm sure, who's entered, we had a really good year. It's been really tough this year, but look what, even if we haven't smashed our targets, whatever it is, look what we've learned, look how we're changing, and how much we can look forward to next year and making everything better. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question. I sort of rambled on, but yeah, it's being really clear about what's important and what those steps are.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. And it like you mentioned, it sort of preempted some of the next questions, or rather set them up. But it sounds like your, I suppose, main piece of advice is to take everything in proportion and say, you know what, this year has been exceptionally difficult. You just need to take the successes as and when they come.
Exactly.
Perfect. So you touched on this slightly, but what do you think the priorities are going to be for agencies over the next year? And how do you think that's going to impact the work that we're going to see develop over the next 12 months? I'm
going to start with the same where I started in the last question, actually, which is our people. I think there are 2 things. One, obviously, is to keep them safe physically. We don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. We're hearing that we're going to go back to 6 people, and who knows, we might go into full lockdown again soon. And if that's what keeps our people safe, that's what keeps us safe. So safe physically is definitely important, but so is safe mentally. And I think that's something that we talk about all the time. We want people to be able to be themselves. We want people to be able to say, I don't feel okay. The whole expression, it's okay not to be okay. And we want that feeling of safety, because when you feel safe, it means you can be yourself. And when you can be yourself and you feel safe, it's when creativity happens. It's when you don't feel silly for saying something. You know what I mean? You've got that sort of safe space. So I think that's really important for our industry. I think also keeping our people motivated. They've been, and I'm hearing it from different agency leaders as well. I think as an industry, our people have been so amazing at adapting, and we do it all the time. We're used to tight deadlines. We're used to change requests and at the last minute. We're used to having our words changed and our pictures. We're good at adapting, and I think we've really shown it in the last year. And I think it's keeping that motivation and dedication. I think people have shown, that they want to be in this industry. They want to work hard. They still want to do the best work they want to do against, some considerable odds this year. So I think keeping our people motivated, keeping them safe mentally and physically is really important. And staying creative. I mean, it's when budgets are cut, it's hard to be creative, but also, we talk about there's nothing like the freedom of a tight brief, right? So if you haven't got much money and you are restricted, sometimes that's when you can be your most creative. You know what it's like. As a journalist, you've got a tight word count. Sometimes you can, by tightening it and cutting, you can get to something that's much purer and more potent. So I think creativity, we'll see, And I'll be fascinated when we're judging the awards, see some of the work that some of the agencies have been doing, because I'm sure, not especially in my world, the more sort of direct world and digital world, you're being really focused on a particular audience. You don't always get to see all the work because it's so one-to-one. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think I've got 3 Ps actually. That was people. The second one is progress. So keep pushing forward, keep making progress, and importantly, keep sharing that progress, because that in turn will keep your people motivated. So it's just making sure every time, you know, there's so much bad news, you know, not in yours, obviously, not in the drum, but open some of the industry press, and there's a lot of doom and gloom, redundancies, you know, clients leaving, senior leadership suddenly disappearing, you don't know where they've gone. There's all this sort of, it's all feels unstable, but actually we're seeing the strength of those agencies. So when we are winning, when great stuff's happening, great work's being produced, we should celebrate it and show that progress. And I think finally it's passion. You know, I think as an industry, we're pretty good at beating ourselves up, which is why we're good at what we do, because by beating ourselves up, a little bit of self-flagellation is good. So hang on a minute, are we being total, you know what? So let's just stop, take a deep breath. What are we doing? And we want to make the world better. We want to make things better. So I think keeping that, that passion to change, I think is really important.
That's fantastic. And I really like how personal it was, you know, not just for yourself, but for the team, making sure that everyone has those shared goals and is aware of quite how far you've come.
Yeah,
well, speaking of passion, you mentioned that you've mentioned that your passions are direct and digital. Everything's changed over the last 12 months, but what innovation in particular has happened in those areas?
Commerce is really exciting me. I think it has always been the workhorsey end of what we do, but it's actually one of the most important parts of what we do, because if you get to that point, you can do the best campaign in the world, the best director do, might have the best website in the world, but if that experience isn't great, you're not going to convert those sales, which, as we know, is where the effectiveness comes in. So I've been finding that fascinating. I'm going to talk about 2 bits of work, which are probably quite old and probably more than a year old, but still inspiring me, which was the Do Black card from Do Economy, which was a carbon limit credit card, which I just thought was a stroke of genius, where please look up the case if you haven't seen it already, anybody who happens to be listening, if there's anybody listening. But it's just a brilliant invention where you can set your own carbon limits. So you literally can't spend on your credit card if you've bought too many products with too much of a high account. The other one, which I absolutely loved, is actually for Banksy and his gross domestic product website. So I don't know if you've been on, he launched his shop, and it's absolutely anti-best practice for e-commerce. That's what I love about it. It's so him. It's anti-e-commerce establishment. It's mad. So you go on it and it's like, it's so badly designed, right, to start with. It's just got horrible, like this warning thing on it. It's just horrible. But obviously the products are absolutely wonderful. So I went on it, and there was a rat clock with a rat runs around the clock. I thought, right, thinking, right, I want it. It was really expensive, and it was obviously like cost £5 to make, but it was about 300 quid. And I went to go and buy it, but you had to answer a qualifying question to qualify as a possible purchaser. I mean, talk about putting barriers in the way to buying things. So the question was, why is art important? And I thought, right, I'm going to do something really anti-establishment. So I put, it's not, and put it through. And I never qualified as a purchaser, so I could never buy my clock, which just makes me want it even more. So there's a wonderful psychology in there. And I think learning from that, thinking that best practice is important, but if everything's best practice, everything can feel the same. And remembering that the brand has to be at the heart of creativity. And that was so on Banksy's brand, not giving a toss on annoying people, making it really hard to buy something that actually he wants to be utterly desirable. I just thought was a stroke of genius. There's that. I think from our point of view, as a business, our voice continues to be something that's pushed and explored. And our Lab 13 last year did really well with a piece of work called Signs, where they taught voice assistants to read sign language. So it's really, really wonderful. It was obviously in the sort of charity space, but now they're doing some stuff because of COVID, and we're looking at the sort of zero touch communications. So it's taking us where we started with the voicing, it's taking us somewhere else. So watch this space. There will be some stuff pushed out about that, but it's fascinating because COVID is going to change. You know, we're still all doing elbows. I find that really hard, to be honest, because I'm a hugger. If you're a hugger, I think this has been really, really tough. But watch that space. I think that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I've seen some fantastic experimentation going on with that area already. So you're right. I think that's more than anything else that's going to be interesting. Yeah. Although that, you know, your answer about best practice not always being, I suppose, best practice for getting people's attention and getting people to buy in, I think is something that all the entries are going to really enjoy hearing about as well.
Yeah, I think it's like you can go into any sector and you look at charity sector, for example, and you look at DRTV. There's a real best practice way of doing charity advertising, but that's why a lot of it looks the same, because it's got the phone number up all the time, it's got the band, and it's when you use the stuff you learn through best practice and don't ignore it or throw it out, but use it in a slightly different way and bend it to the brand, or use it in a way that's going to grab people's attention rather than everything looking the same. So I think it's always a good challenge, but you have to get to the best practice bit first before you can break it.
Yeah, certainly. I can't remember who said that. You have to be. Oh, it was a guy who he does really famous cartoons, and he said you have to learn how to draw people well before you can, you know, distort and stretch them and make them look cartoony. Well, you spoke about people a lot, and you've always been a very vocal champion of equality, inclusivity, actually getting people from, you know, very different backgrounds to feel safe and welcome within the industry. So to what extent do you think the industry is actually moving in the right direction there, and what else needs to happen to improve that?
I think, as I said, I think we're really good at beating ourselves up, but actually just, you know, the last few weeks I've been able to see some of my friends who work in different industries and talking to them about some of the things that we're all doing and how far ahead our industry might be compared to others. So there's a lot of stuff we're doing, but it's never enough. Okay, I think we're all sitting here thinking there's so much I need to do. I think there are sort of three things. One is learn. So understand people's backgrounds that aren't the same as your own, and understand that and learn about it. And I think that was something particularly that came through after the George Floyd murder was about Black history, for example, and how those of us who don't have life experience had to just learn about it and realise just how little we knew. And that's my personal point of view, but that's how I feel about it. I think the other bit is talk, this openness, and like I said about safe space. I think there's a lot of, we're very good at saying what we want to do, but everything becomes a bit sanitized because people are so worried about saying the wrong thing. And I think it's only when we say the wrong thing that we can be corrected that we're saying the wrong thing and understand we're saying the wrong thing. So it's one of these sort of vicious circles, really. But I think just accepting that we're not going to get it right all the time, but also calling it out if someone understands something might not be quite right or offensive, is to, just like I said earlier, to be in a safe enough space with your colleagues and friends and be able to call it out. But I think the most important one is the do bit, which is we can learn, we can talk, but we have to do something to make positive change. We've just put together we're calling it the sounding board. So the sounding board is a board of a mixture of people from different backgrounds, and it's fantastic, who everybody had to apply, and then they were voted for, and they've come onto the sounding board, and that's to literally be the exec board sounding board and vice versa. So the sounding board is going to join our board meetings and hold us to account. Likewise, we're going to challenge them if they hold us to account, they raise something to do something about it. So and we're going to have a budget, and it's, you know, sometimes when you're at an exec level, you hope you know exactly what's going on the ground and everything, but you don't always. So, and you have to listen, you have to have really big ears. But that's why I think the sounding board's really important, and we're really excited about that. So that's about 2 months in, so we shall see what's happening now. I'm waiting for our big challenges and what they're going to ask us to do. But yeah, that's what I think. I think action is everything, because until we do stuff, nothing changes. We can talk about it, but let's do some stuff. And there are some brilliant, I'm going to plug Hidden. So Hidden, they're fantastic. We're one of their founding partners. Hidden are a brilliant recruitment company, blind CVs. We've been working with them since they started, so it must be nearly 2 years. And they will put somebody within your business, so that person almost becomes extension of your team rather than hidden as employee. Understand your culture, but also, as I say, will bring you a richer and more diverse bunch of people to interview in the first instance. So hidden are fantastic. If you haven't got, I think quite a lot of people are hearing about hidden, but do find out about them. And we also work with Jolt. So Jolt, I'm sure you know about them, but Jolt do 8 weekly placements of junior creatives from different backgrounds, and you can rotate. But we've been really lucky. Our first team that we had in for 8 weeks, Melody and Gayatri, we rotated them and kept them in, and then we hired them. And it's one of those things where I call it the fear that we are missing out on talent because we don't come across it. So it's like, that's what scares me. We would never have met Melody and Gayatri if we hadn't done that thing. And I think they're so fantastic. It's like, oh my goodness. And there must be so much talent out there that we're just not seeing. And likewise, Creative equals returnship. So bring people back into the industry for whatever reason, had to take a significant break. And Agatha O'Neill joined us as a senior designer, was just on a sort of placement basis. And again, we've hired Agatha, and like it's the fear. It's really, that's the thing that keeps me awake at night, that there's talent out there that we're missing out on, and talent that isn't getting the chance to grow themselves and be part of our industry. So that's a biggie for me. And we can never do enough, but we've got to do. We can never do enough, but we've got to do. I think that'll be my little soundbite on that.
It's perfect. Thank you very much. And as a final question, you've touched on it a couple of times, but what are you most looking forward to with the entries this year, from your perspective?
I'm looking forward to, and we talk about in our entry actually, but it's about this sort of game of two halves, or this two halves thing. And it's the pre-COVID and post, not post-COVID, in COVID. Come on that day when we're post-COVID. But seeing what happened and what people have learned. So what the first 6 months were like, what the second 6 months are like, how the agencies, and as I said, I think we're really adaptable as agencies, how agencies have pivoted, and how their teams have responded, because that tells you so much about the culture of an agency, on how quickly they can turn stuff around, how strong their relationships are with their clients. So who's kept their clients, whose clients are still investing. I know that's difficult because it does depend on the industry and their own personal businesses, but also what positive change have they seen? So not all the doom and gloom that it was great the 6 months, it wasn't so great. Second, what positive change have they seen, and what are they most looking forward to in the future? So it's more all the learnings. This has been the biggest moment in all of our careers, I think, in our lives. The biggest thing that we've all shared together. So are those experiences going to be consistent, or are they going to be slightly different? And going back to your original question about, people's North Stars and what they see as success, I think it's going to be interesting how consistent we are or not. I've got a feeling it's going to be pretty consistent, and it's going to be quite a hard task.
Nicky, thank you so much for doing that. I know that everybody who's been watching will find that incredibly useful. And thank you to everyone at home for watching as well. And good luck with the Agency Business Awards.